Okay, so here we are at the National Museum of Ethiopia. Take a look. I believe this is the main building over here. There's a school trip going in, which is so cute. So here is Lucy herself, or DINKNESH, which means you are wonderful in, I believe, Amharic. She was found in 1974 in the Afar region of Ethiopia, and her skeleton dates back 3.2 million years. Of course, she's a huge symbol of, Ethiopian heritage, and her discovery has helped to shape our understanding of human ancestry. But it's also very interesting because we have Salem over here, who died when she was 3 years old, around 3 years old, tiny skull. And she's actually 150,000 years older than Lucy. But me personally, I haven't heard much about her. And then we have Addis over here as well. This is her partial skeleton, thought to be female because of her particularly small canines and skull. They think she was a tree climber as well as walking on 2 feet. So that's the thing about Lucy, I think, is that she is a very early example of bipedalism, which is walking on 2 feet, whereas Addis was a combination of tree climbing and walking on 2 feet. I've wanted to come to Ethiopia for years, and I would say one of the driving factors, like the main driving factor, I'm so interested in terms of the Islamic history and even the Christian history as well. So, the fact that it's thought of as the land of origins, in the sense that, this is where Lucy has been found, such an important specimen in terms of human ancestry, but also it was one of the earliest countries to accept Christianity in, I think it was the 4th century, the year 330 AD, and then also Islam, one of the earliest countries to accept Islam. Of course, the Hijratul Ula, so the first Hijrah, they came to Ethiopia, and Najashi accepted the Muslims, and that's where they tried to go before they went from Mecca to Medina. So, in terms of history of civilization, human ancestry, religious history, the Abrahamic religions, it just feels like there's so much to this country in that sense. Actually I was reading, and I believe that Abyssinia, where Najashi accepted the Muslims from the first Hijrah, the first migration, I think it's actually modern day Eritrea. So of course Abyssinia as a land, the Habash region was much broader than Ethiopia. So, this history belongs to Abyssinia as a whole and not just Ethiopia. So Eritrea next, inshallah. So these are inscriptions that predate Christ. So this was, what year does it say? The 8th century before the Common Era. And they're very close to the inscriptions found in South Arabia, in the Kingdom of Sheba, which is modern day Yemen. Seba, I think it is in Arabic, but the Kingdom of Sheba. Very interesting. So the inscriptions are really similar, but also some distinctive elements as well. I'm not sure what those elements are. But it shows that while these inscriptions would have been made for, quite important purposes, there's also examples of graffiti. So it shows that it wasn't just the kings and, the elite who were literate and would use writing. This one here is a particularly important document. it's documenting a couple of kings, and it shows, I actually don't know if I'm supposed to be going from left to right or right to left, so we'll do both. But yeah, a couple of kings, and it documents the cultural ties between Ethiopia and modern day Yemen. They traded luxury goods like gold and elephant ivory, but also an important concern was the control of the frankincense trade route. And it's so interesting because all of this is documented in sort of ancient Chinese and ancient Egyptian texts. Ethiopia, as well as South Arabia, are considered potentially part of the ancient land of Pun, which means land of God. I've also heard that Somaliland is considered a part of that too. So it's really interesting. A friend of mine was telling me that it's thought that baby Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, he received the frankincense, gold and myrrh that came from modern day Somaliland. So that's definitely another place that I'm really keen to go. And coming here, it's all sort of, the history is all kind of coming together for me. I'm making them connections, so it's really interesting. So entering another era, so in the 1st century, after the Common Era, so 1st century AD, we've got the Aksum kingdom, very powerful kingdom that is mentioned by classical authors. And from the 3rd century, after the Common Era, you know, there's documentation of their caravans which brought slaves, gold, ivory and wild animals along the trade route, which linked Aksum to the port of Addis, which is on the Red Sea, modern day Eritrea. And there were merchants from the Roman Empire, Arabia and India where they exchanged luxury goods and spices, etc. And then it was a king from this kingdom, from the Aksum kingdom, King Ezana, who actually accepted Christianity, and then Ethiopia, or the Habash region, over time became more and more Christian. So it's fascinating. I feel like it's all coming together. Between the 4th and the 6th century, the kingdom of Aksum reached its political and economic peak before declining during the 7th century, which is very interesting because it's the 7th century when Islam spread through the region. Theories as to its causes of its downfall include the interruption of trade routes linked to the spread of Islam, or maybe even an environmental crisis as well. So I'm just reading this from the interpretation, but it's fascinating. This is a view of Aksum obelisk in 1805. It doesn't actually mention who painted it. From what I read, what I've understood is that Christianity came to the Aksum kingdom through the efforts of a Christian missionary from Tyre. His name was Frumentius. So it was him who, you know, tried to convert King Ezana and did manage to. And then later on, during the reign of the king of Lalibela, and there is another king, I believe, the king of Lalibela, which is the region with the rock-hewn churches, which is just incredible. I wanted to go, but I decided not to this time. Didn't want to rush it. But it was the king of Lalibela who really, you know, Christianity flourished, and he pursued Christianity. And some people did convert to Islam during that time as well, but for the majority it was Christianity, and it was under him that it became, you know, stronger within the country, from what I understand. One thing that I was really hoping to see here, which unfortunately they only have pictures of, is some early manuscripts. So I would have loved to see some of the Christian, Jewish and Muslim manuscripts that were either written in, I'm not sure how to say this, but Ge'ez, or I learned the word in Arabic, Al-Jaz, which was the language of the Jewish Ethiopians, and also the literary language of the Christians as well. And then of course the Islamic texts tended to be in Arabic. So I would have loved to see examples of those, but there aren't any, unfortunately. Out inside with lots of people, and I think there's some construction going on as well, so I've just come to this sort of quiet corner. What is very interesting is that the manuscripts that they have mentioned, the Islamic manuscripts that they've mentioned from the 16th to 17th century, I believe, they seem to be tending towards some sort of Sufi order. So interesting to know that there were obviously sort of communities that were following Sufi orders related to Yemen and the Red Sea. Many of the Islamic manuscripts that they found, it's written that they are in the A'jami script. So the first time I came across this word A'jami was when I saw an exhibition at the British Museum about the A'jami manuscripts in Mali, and I learned that essentially what A'jami script is when you have any other language that is written in the Arabic script. So whether that's Wolof, but written with the Arabic script, or that's Somali or Amharic, but written in Arabic. And they have many of those manuscripts. Again, not here, unfortunately, I can't see them. And I learned in that exhibition, it was so fascinating, and it completely opened my eyes to sort of West Africa and becoming very interested in West Africa, is those scripts. At first, when they were originally found, they were thought to be gibberish because they were written in Arabic, but of course it was immediately noticeable that they weren't Arabic. So they thought they were gibberish, and then they later found that actually they found some manuscripts that slaves had written down thick books, so books explaining Islamic etiquette and how to make wudu, how to pray, etc. Slaves from West Africa had retained their culture and made sure that it was continued among those who were enslaved by writing down these books about Islam in the A'jami script, in Arabic, but it was written in, for example, Wolof, and it blew my mind. I was amazed. And to think that to begin with they thought that was gibberish, and then for them to realise, whoever found them, I can't remember, for them to realise that these are extremely important Islamic, so I'm so bad at doing two things at once, extremely important in terms of history. So this painting, unfortunately there's no indication of the date whatsoever, but it depicts the journey of the Queen of Sheba. And it's interesting because it's sort of a mixture of styles. You can see in some faces that kind of quite Persian style of painting. But then not in the whole thing. And I've actually seen a lot of Ethiopian paintings now, and they certainly have this same style. So I'm going to look into what sort of period it was to get a better understanding of when these paintings were done. It's unfortunate that there's no indication. It's a wonderful painting. Yeah, the style of these paintings look very similar to paintings that I saw in the Ethnological Museum, but the artists, I'm sure that's a different name, so it's not just one artist who paints in this style. I wonder if it was a trend here in Ethiopia. As you can see, these ones do have dates, so this one's 1997, and it depicts the victory of the motherland against the Italians. I think it needs a good clean, this one. But wow, there's so many paintings depicting the victory of Ethiopia over the Italians. It's very moving, actually. And then you see the livestock in the background. And then here's the depiction of the Italians. Again, no year for this one, but another beautiful painting, Mother and Baby, by Yegazul Bisrat. That's the artist. Most of the paintings seem to be from like the 60s to the 80s, so perhaps this one is too. That's another period of really interesting religious history in terms of Rastafarianism and the link between Ethiopia and the Caribbean, which I don't feel like I've explored enough yet, and I don't have time to explore it as much as I would have loved to. I know that you can go to certain places within Ethiopia that still have strong Rastafarian communities, which would have been fascinating. It would have been great to meet them and to learn more about it. But here is Haile Selassie's banquet. So from what I understand, Haile Selassie invited enslaved Africans to come to Ethiopia as an alternative and a way to reconnect with the motherland. And that's why he was seen as a sort of messiah and a really important figure. So there he is. Again, this one doesn't have a year, and the artist is unknown, but a very similar style to the others. This is a depiction of women from the Harar region, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, which is a predominantly Muslim region, and you can see that reflected in their clothing, and maybe even the building behind it is known for its Islamic heritage and architecture, could be a masjid behind. What caught my eye is her jewellery, which just looks so similar to Amazigh jewellery over in North Africa. So if you see jewellery from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, possibly even Mauritania, it's very similar. And whenever you see indigenous cultures, it's so interesting that, zoomed in, it's so interesting that the jewellery, even in Afghanistan as well, the jewellery looks really similar. And when you see those indigenous communities and the clothing and the jewellery, it's so often really similar, even though the countries are so far apart. And yeah, it's interesting to think how that came to be. I haven't really touched on it, but there's also loads of contemporary art as well. So this one's called Hope, and it's from 2012. Which is beautiful. There's no faces on those depicted, which could be some sort of artistic decision, but equally it could be that the painter is a Muslim and doesn't believe in depicting Allah's creation. And then this is Meskel Square in 2013. Me speculating that it's Muslims who many Muslims take the opinion that you shouldn't draw faces, but perhaps there's other people within Ethiopia who have the same belief of different religions. That's just pure speculation, so do let me know. This is so beautiful. It's got no information about it whatsoever, but you can see that it's carved out of wood. So some sort of etching, perhaps it's an etching to then put ink on and then print it. Similar to lino printing, except this is definitely not lino, but it is so incredible. I'm always impressed by this, by etching. Absolutely stunning. Ah yes, so this is a printed version that would have been an etching originally and then using ink to print it, and it is absolutely stunning. Look at that. Look at that man's face, how it depicts his strength and power, just incredible. Emperor Haile Selassie. This is a portrait of the daughter of Emperor Menelik. Her name is Empress Zudita Menelik, and it is so similar to a portrait that, a very famous portrait of Queen Victoria. In her stance, she's holding the scepter, that crown, it's so regal. She looks incredible. This is Emperor Menelik himself, Menelik II. And then here we have Emperor Johannes. And I would love to know the history of the name Johannes. It seems really common here. And to me that is like a Dutch name, maybe a Swedish name, Scandi name, but I would love to know how it became so widespread here in Ethiopia. Guys, I'm not gonna lie, I'm absolutely buzzing. I feel like that definitely gave me the sense of history that I wanted, the history that I sort of knew was there, but now I feel like I've got a better understanding of it. Hopefully I sort of narrated it for you guys as well, so that you got a sense of it too. Let me quickly show you what is in the gardens here. Now gonna go to a coffee shop to meet the others. They're just nearby, they just finished earlier than me.